So we have some news.
Do we?
We do. We were charting very recently.
Wowee.
On the UK... not you, Jake, but on the UK comedy podcasts.
That's
which is
cool.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you want to get us higher in the charts...
We charted on comedy and not on science or education.
I feel like that's accurate. Entirely accurate. Yeah. If you guys want to help us chart higher or help us keep on charting, which would be fantastic, the best thing to do is to leave us a review on
your
iTunes.
Preferred app of choice.
Or your preferred app of choice, but please just do it on iTunes.
iTunes, Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts, yeah. Good.
Which is like 80% of our listenership anyway.
I mean, who doesn't use iTunes?
It's like
Apple
actually, I think it's
Podcasts.
like 75 Apple, then 20% Spotify, and then the rest.
The rest
is just
and then
in
Castbox.
that like 10%.
But if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be absolutely fantastic. Before we start the show, I want to read out another email. This one is from Alison.
Hi, Alison.
Hello.
Hello.
So Alison says, meet the dogs of Chernobyl. Hi, I just listened to episode 9 on Chernobyl. Your comment about the dog cull reminded me about a news article I saw recently. Not all the dogs who were left behind were killed. Many survived and bred. There are estimated to be hundreds of stray dogs living in the exclusion zone. So I'm going to keep on going with that. Volunteers are now going into the area to capture, care for, and rehome these strays. And then Alison has left a bunch of links to some nice articles. And they've also said, it's not just dogs that are living in the exclusion zone. Due to the lack of humans, wildlife is also thriving.
Yeah.
Which is really true. I was watching a video on this the other day.
Were we watching that together? Because I also watched a video about
Oh,
this.
yeah, it was
I think we were, yeah.
it was Kyle Hill, Because Science. He did a whole video on the animals and wildlife just thriving because we haven't been...
It's caused some species to thrive in that area.
Despite the high levels of radiation, apparently humans are worse for the environment.
They're better off with the radiation and without humans.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks, Alison.
Thanks for your email.
It's really nice. If you guys want to send an email, you can send us one at sciguyspod@gmail.com.
That's sciguyspod@gmail.com.
Shall we start the show?
Yes.
Hello and welcome to the Sci Guys, the show where we talk about the crazy, weird and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Corry, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Champ and special guest Jake Edwards.
Hello.
Hello.
None of this soft boy crap.
Soft boy.
Not on my podcast, sir.
I'm the softest, most valid uwu boy.
Would you like to tell everyone who you are, Jake?
Hello, I'm Jake. My pronouns are he and they. Sometimes I make YouTube videos, although mostly not.
Perfect replacement for Luke, then.
Yeah, beautiful.
This week we'll be talking about floating frogs and fun Friday nights.
Fun Friday nights. And floating frogs.
I don't like the weird sensual eye contact that you made with me then.
I'm waiting for you to
were
talk.
locked on with Jake there.
Andrei Geim is a Russian scientist who started off levitating frogs, which set him off on the path to winning a Nobel Prize using some Scotch tape and pencil lead. We're going to be Scotch tape. It's like sellotape. You know Scotch tape?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a brand. Yeah, it's a brand.
Yeah, it's a brand of sellotape.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a little bit of background on Andrei. I assume that's how you pronounce his name. So Andrei's a scientist from Russia. You can't call him Russian, though. He doesn't like that. He
doesn't like being called Russian.
No, he calls himself European because he's worked all around Europe, and he says, "I think that's as specific as you need to get."
So he was assigned Russian at birth, but doesn't identify with being Russian.
He's trans-European, yeah. I'm going to give you guys a few facts on Andrei from his autobiography because he seems like just an interesting guy. I like the cut of his jib. So he fell down a 100-meter deep crevasse without a rope. He was called Russian for the first time at the age of 32. He studied intercontinental ballistic missiles, and he was a bricklayer north of the Arctic Circle. So he's had a pretty
That's a lot
varied
to take
life.
in. So hold on, he fell down a 100-meter crevasse.
He fell down a big hole. Yeah.
Found out a big hole. He was called Russian for the first time at 32.
Yeah, I don't know the story behind that. He refused to go into it in this autobiography.
The first time... right, okay.
So in his autobiography, he started off with these facts about himself.
Right,
and then said, I'm not going to go into any of these. Here's everything I did for my PhD.
That makes more sense. It wasn't a book about being called Russian at 32.
No,
falling down a hole.
He's an odd man. He's got a good sense of humor. He's also received a Dutch and British knighthood. Not joint, two separate ones.
Two?
Yeah, one Dutch and one British.
Well, yes, that's two.
Yeah, but not two from not two from the Netherlands and two from.
No, 2 in total.
I'm just being clear. And here's a quote from him. He said, "I often repeat the phrase, I like individual humans, but I hate the human race. If you think you probably share the same opinion."
Why is Luke not here for this
This
episode?
is why I'm reading this out, because this is such a Luke. This guy is
Yeah,
right up Luke's alley.
absolutely agree.
If you think you probably share the same opinion, you see what we've done to the planet, how we destroy everything. When I hear about anything about global warming, especially when politicians or other scientists are raising questions about global warming, I switch TV channels. For God's sake, there's global warming, and yes, it's caused by humans. It really gets on my nerves how stupid we remain as a race.
Stupid.
Yeah, that sounds valid. I agree.
Yeah. So I'll tell you about the levitating frogs then.
Yes.
Right.
So,
To the meat of the episode. The nitty gritty.
as Andrew said, in my experience, if people don't have a sense of humor, they're usually not a very good scientist. So, he got really curious about magnetism when he didn't have any equipment to continue his experiments at the Radboud University.
That university again.
Radboud?
Hold on.
Oh, yeah, we
talked
did talk
about this
that,
university
didn't we? Yeah.
with when Dan was here. We were talking
was-
about it was about black holes. Wow.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
Wow, a recurring character. That's nice.
So this was
Radboud University.
This was in their high-field magnet laboratory in the Netherlands. So one Friday evening, he set the electromagnet to maximum power and then just poured water right into the machine.
Sounds like a fun Friday night, if you ask me.
Yeah. He just wanted to see what would happen. He said he doesn't remember why he behaved so unprofessionally, but he could see that the water got stuck in the hole. So it was like levitating,
Right.
little
Yeah.
droplets of water just floating up. And he basically discovered that there was a feeble magnetic response in water, which could act against Earth's gravitational force, basically just levitating it.
Interesting.
So he kind of went around telling people that, and they were like,
Nah.
"Are you sure? I mean, that doesn't really seem right." Like, even other scientists weren't really sure if that was kind of what would happen. So to kind of prove his point, he decided to start levitating frogs in it. So as far as I'm aware, he took a frog from the biology department. He's in the physics department, obviously. So he took a frog from the biology department and
Stealing.
chucked it in the. He asked for it.
Oh, he asked for it.
And then chucked it in the electromagnet, and floated it. So it was in a magnetic field of about 16 Tesla. Just to put that in perspective for you, the strength of a fridge magnet is about 5 millitesla.
That's quite small.
That's very small.
That sounds small.
Yeah, so this was 16 Tesla. 0.3 Tesla is a solar sunspot. 4 Tesla is the superconducting magnet around the CMS detector at CERN. And 1.5 to 3 Tesla is the strength of the MRIs used in medical testing.
Did the frog not just like explode or something?
Frog
Like,
was lying.
How?
So he's just like chilling. He's just like having a little spa day, floating around with some water in like a
Popping
machine.
along.
Yeah, I mean,
Like right before he gets like cut open, he's just like having time of his life.
I don't think they cut. I hope they didn't cut the frog. They probably did cut
They
the frog
probably did
open,
cut the
Yeah.
frog open,
but it was a tiny little frog, like
It's
a little.
still a frog.
Oh, that
like
makes it
poor
fine then.
little froggy. I mean, admittedly, right? He
I'm
probably
just saying.
had the
there's a different
best
standard for the
last
smaller
day.
frogs.
That was the best last day a frog has ever had before being cut open.
My
He's
point
just
being-
like,
Therefore, it should be
floating
thankful.
around.
My point being that they probably didn't cut open that little frog because it's too small to look inside.
They've got things for that, Corey. To look to when something's really small and you can't see it. Scientists generally have things to mean they can see it. So I'm pretty sure they probably cut open that frog at some point.
What would be the point of cutting open the frog? What can we learn from just cutting open a frog?
I don't know, things about
This frog.
biology. He took it from the biology department. He probably went and put it back, and then
Why
they
did
were
they
like,
have the
"Ooh,
frog then?
ooh, let's cut this one open."
They could have had it for any number of reasons.
I mean, they
I'm
might.
not
have,
going to entertain.
they might have done it just to
unlikely.
see what the magnet did to his organs. You never know. They could have like shifted around a bit. Could have done something real weird.
Okay.
You could learn something from that.
Well,
So I'm gonna say he got cut open.
in what I read, they said that he went on to join his little friends again.
Nope, died.
Okay, good. So it's possible to levitate magnetically every material and every living creature on the Earth.
Everything.
Not at once,
Well,
but
individually.
yeah, individually. you can probably do it.
If everything was floating, then wouldn't nothing be floating?
That's just space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, isn't everything floating anyway? Because we can't touch anything because there's like atoms between us and anything. So at any given moment, we're
Yeah,
not
it's a
actually
really good
touching
point you bring
anything.
up there, Jake.
Yes.
Science.
I suppose if you think about it that way, because we're not actually touching anything, yes, we are floating. But
There
sure.
we go. Prove my point.
Sure. Okay.
Don't need a magnet to do that. That's just that's au naturale right there. Doing it by myself.
So
Have you got a degree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duh.
the reason we can
Yes, sir.
magnetically levitate anything is because everything is at least a little bit magnetic. Not in the same way that ferromagnetic things are magnetic, like iron and most magnets you know about. It's just a tiny, tiny little bit. Like millions of times less magnetic than, say, iron. But everything's still a little bit magnetic.
Tiny bit.
Tiny little bit.
Tiny little bit. Is that why people can... I know some people have the ability to like stick spoons to their skin.
Oh,
Is that why, or is that just...
I think that isn't
another
that
reason?
about having like high iron levels.
Maybe.
I think that's
Yeah.
what that is, and then like that people have that thing where like electronics don't work around them because of
Really?
like something biological. Yeah, no, that it's a thing.
I've not
Like
heard of
it's
that one
actually a thing.
before. Whoa.
Like they're like if you meet someone and they just seem like really bad at technology or like things like keep breaking around them, it's like an actual thing. I don't know how legit it is, but I've read an article about how like it's something to do with you on a biological level that means like electronics do actually mess up around you.
Interesting.
I think someone just wrote that article to make themselves feel better.
Maybe they're shit
Maybe.
technology.
I mean, like I find a lot of comfort in
Actually,
that
it's
because
technology breaks around me.
no, like I'm really bad at technology, so I take a lot of comfort in that. That's
But
probably why it's
can I just
stuck
put
with
out
me.
that
We won't burst your bubble.
you're not biologically incapable with technology. You're just...
No, I
you're
think
just-
I am at a biological disadvantage. It's something that I can't help. It's out of my control.
The other day I had to help Jake set up their computer because it wouldn't work. Turned out they were trying to plug a cable into the wrong hole.
Well, listen, the first time I went
There
to
was
plug
nothing
it,
wrong.
no, the first time I went to plug it into the hole, I guess I just came at it at the wrong angle and I thought it didn't fit. So I was like, oh, maybe it's the other hole then. So I put it in that hole. We ended up like cracking off the side of my computer, checking nothing was broken. I was having like a full meltdown. And then Corey's just like, have you tried that one? And I'm like, no, it doesn't work. Plugs it in. Everything's fine. I think I'm just
Literally,
dumb, to be
first
honest.
try.
It's such a you thing.
It really is.
Yeah,
Big
you're
dumb baby.
biologically incapable. Okay.
No, it's because it's a condition.
Back to the magnets.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were here.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Obviously, there are quite a lot of applications for that. If we can levitate small objects, we can simulate anti-gravity without actually having to send anything to space.
Oh, good
Yeah,
point.
so we can have microgravity
Good point.
environments without putting anything in space. Just use a big magnet. Chuck it in a magnet.
Big ass magnet.
Yeah. Which is really, really cool because getting to space is it's really hard
It is quite hard.
and very
I've
dangerous,
heard.
as we've spoken about far too many times on this podcast.
Could we use one of those little magnet-y machines to like, you know how you used to have like those moon shoes where they were basically just like trampolines strapped to your feet? Could you do the same thing with this and then like make humans like float? Like, is that possible?
Put magnets on your feet.
Yeah, kind of, but just like really smart, strong magnets that like repel
the Earth.
The ground.
Earth. Yeah.
So you could. That's kind of how maglev trains work. But you'd have to have the right flooring. So did you see that hoverboard that was going around?
Oh yeah.
A while ago. So how that works is essentially you've got a super cooled superconductor and the right kind of flooring, and they will repel each other so long as the superconductor remains super cooled. So you could technically do that.
Can't we do it just like on any floor or like on water so we can like walk on water? Because that'd be really dope.
No.
You just want to walk.
Yeah, I just want to walk. I just want to float.
Well, if you've seen Back to the Future, you'll actually know that hoverboards don't work on water.
Well,
They don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
they
true.
don't. Mm-mm.
I'm saying if we get like smarter science, so we can do it on
magnetize the water.
Yeah.
I mean, not with this. No. I'm not
Well,
going to say no.
I'm disappointed.
You could, maybe, but not really with this.
I don't think this was the story for me, really.
No, I'm sorry about
I'm
that.
upset.
That's it for this week's.
That's us done. They've actually said that they can use this to levitate larger objects than just frogs. It doesn't really matter how big it is, just depends how big you can build the magnet. And it's on an atomic level that everything is levitated. So it's almost perfect anti-gravity, or as perfect as we could get.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there no way that that's going to have a like damaging effect on your body though?
Well, they've not really done many studies onto that, but so far from what they saw, I say so far from what they saw, the frog looked fine. The frog seemed okay. I haven't read anything that said that
Did
the
they-
frog
did they-
exploded or got
Did
cancer.
they cut it open to find
No,
out?
I think they
Find
cut
out?
it open. They
They
must have cut it open. Yeah.
Yeah,
Otherwise
sure.
you wouldn't know.
We have no way of telling how healthy something is without cutting it open. That's why every time you go to the doctors, you get
They cut
split
you open.
open.
And then stitch you
Exactly.
all
That's
over.
what they did to me.
That was different.
No, it wasn't.
That was
Nope.
for
50% of this house.
for everyone listening. I'm not even going to go into it. No,
I am trans, and they sliced me open for fun just to make sure I was okay on the inside.
just to make sure you're really trans.
Yeah, just to make sure I'm really trans. Before
This is
that,
the
I was just a
initiation.
trender.
So this is diamagnetic levitation, and that was first discovered in 1939 when tiny bits of graphite and bismuth. Do you guys know what bismuth is?
Bismuth. We talked about it before.
We did talk about bismuth.
It's metal, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's like rainbow. It's like rainbow metal.
Oh, I love that stuff.
I'll show you a picture.
just
really
like it
cute.
because it's rainbow, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, it's like a little rainbow metal.
Oh, I love that stuff. That stuff is
So pretty.
So obviously 50 years later, physicists from Grenoble lifted several organic materials using diamagnetic force.
Grenoble.
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 granola.
Grenoble.
Yeah, it's like granola.
It's
and
cereal you
Chernobyl.
get from Chernobyl. Yeah. So Geim obviously discovered that you could do that with water, and then, as I said, quite a lot of scientists, 90%, didn't believe it. So he levitated the frog and proved that diamagnetic levitation is possible with
Right.
living
He
organisms.
proved them wrong, didn't he?
He really showed them.
Showed them scientists.
Have I explained to you guys? Do you guys understand how the frogs float?
No.
But magnetically.
It's like they put some really strong big magnets in a box and put the froggy in it, and the froggy is a little bit magnetic, so it goes.
Okay, that's close enough. Yeah. Yeah.
See?
That's just what I assume, given the very limited information you've given me.
See, you have learned.
I mean,
Limited information.
I'm filling in some blanks. You've said a lot of long sciencey words, and I've just been like, yeah, cool.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll break it down a little more. If you put an atom or a larger piece of matter, which is just lots and lots of atoms in a magnetic field, the electrons that are inside them won't really like it. So they'll then start to...
Not having it.
No, they're not having it. So they change their motion in a way that opposes the force of the magnetic field. So that's essentially how that works. The electrons in all the atoms get pissed off at the magnetic field and kind of repel it.
Screw you.
And that pretty much happens across everything. But not some things like iron. They quite like magnetic fields, so they point in the same way. But you don't need to worry
Yeah.
about that. Just
I
know that
feel
with
like-
everything that levitates, it's kind of...
There's a really great analogy for sexuality in there somewhere. You're
Of course we
there's-
bring you
come on.
Okay, yeah, sure. Iron is gay.
Is the
Iron is gay.
Iron is gay, yeah.
Iron is definitely gay.
So it's just like normal magnets where if you try and put two of the same poles together, they'll push themselves apart. Except instead of having different parts of magnets, you've just got atoms of something and a really, 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 really strong magnet. Where the electrons are the other magnet.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. So you basically turn a frog into a lot of little magnets in the shape of a frog.
And then cut them open.
Interesting.
And then cut the frog open, sure.
Interesting. That makes more sense about the atomic level.
Yeah, so that is how Geim won an Ig Nobel Prize. Not a Nobel Prize, an Ig Nobel Prize.
Ig Nobel Prize.
Have you guys heard of the Ig Nobel Prize?
No.
I have.
You should have, because it was one of the inspirations for this podcast.
Yeah, can't remember how to describe them, but it's the not parody. It's like the.
I don't know. Shall I just
You just explain it.
So, so the Ig Nobel Prize is a yearly prize given out to scientists who publish a paper that is silly, but then makes you think. Like this one with levitating frogs. It seems a bit silly, but it actually has real world applications. So previous
Yeah.
ones that people have won for are things like someone proving that cats are liquid.
Because they fill the space that you put them in.
Yeah, so you put a cat in a thing.
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So-
love that.
They
Which
worked
they
out,
do. They are liquid.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
worked out the shear forces, which we've talked about before, which are like the forces of like movement in a liquid in cats, and the pressures that cats work under. It was actually a really interesting read, to be perfectly honest. And it had pictures as well.
It had pictures.
It did.
Pictures of cats.
So that made Andre Geim one of the only people to have won the Ig Nobel Prize and a Nobel Prize.
That's beautiful.
Which
I
is
love
kind
that
of-
for him.
Yeah, which is the equivalent of winning like an Oscar and a Razzie.
And a Razzie.
So this is an
Nah,
example.
Good for him.
Good,
Good for him. Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's 60.
Oh.
Yeah, he's still
Oh.
kicking about. Yeah.
He's not even that old.
That was the thing. When he wrote his autobiography, he was like, I don't really want to write this until I'm dead because I've still got stuff to do.
Well, you can't ride it when you're dead.
Yeah, but that's kind of
It's a bit late.
yeah. Well, that's kind of the point. He didn't really want to. He didn't really want to do anything until he died. This is an example of Friday night experiments, which is essentially Gaim's name for a kind of crazy or wild thing that probably won't pan out, but if they do, it would be really, really interesting and surprising. So
Happens on Fridays.
exactly. So he has apparently, since the start of his career, devoted 10% of his time to doing these kind of weird, just silly things.
Okay, what else has he done then? Have we got a list of other things he's tried?
I don't have a list of other things everything that he's tried. I've got a list of some things that have worked. So there's gecko tape, and also
Gecko tape.
Gecko tape. Do you guys ever get? I'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to
We'll
go into this. I'll go
we'll
into
circle
it.
back. Okay.
And there's also graphene, but we'll get to that later as well. Don't worry. So Friday night experiments are just so outlandish that they try and limit the amount of time that people work on them because they're not funded, and if you spend too long on it, it will basically mess up your career because you're working needlessly on something that's quite pointless. But because they do just do things that people wouldn't normally think of, they do sometimes lead to quite interesting discoveries. So they've got about a 12.5% success rate so far, which is actually pretty
That's
good.
quite high, actually.
Which is really, really
Not
high.
bad.
I mean, if you think about people that
That's like one
work
in-
their lives away
one
trying
in
to
8?
find a cure for malaria, I mean,
Yeah.
like success rate on that
That's
is
not
still
quite-
zero.
That's not quite 12.5 yet.
Yeah, no. So 12.5 is really, really good. He says that they're entering into someone else's territory and they start questioning things that people that work in the area just wouldn't, because they've kind of got the spirit of an amateur. So they don't really know
Yeah.
what they're working with. They don't really know what questions have been asked or what questions can be asked.
Yeah.
So they just kind of go in a little bit blind,
That's a good point.
which really works out. So they've also made gecko tape, which I just mentioned.
Yeah,
I told you to get back to it.
We've circled back to it now.
That was foreshadowing, guys. Yeah.
What the heck
True
is
author. What's gecko
gecko
tape?
What the hecko is gecko tape? Yeah, I'll
Ah,
tell you.
ha.
Do you know how geckos stick to anything?
Do they?
Pretty much, yeah. They can stick to glass, sheer surfaces.
Oh wow.
Did you really not know that?
Good for them.
That's one. It's like the main thing about geckos.
Sticky boys.
Sticky boy.
They're little sticky boys, better than spiders and stuff.
Oh wow, I want a sticky
I
boy.
didn't know that.
You don't want a sticky boy.
I want a sticky boy.
You get a sticky boy.
Sticky
I'd
boy.
love a sticky boy.
So,
Not magnetically, I assume.
no, not magnetically.
They're just very sticky.
They use van der Waals forces. So on their little gecko hands, they've got tiny, tiny little hairs, essentially, that are microscopic. And whenever they put their hand on something, I say their little gecko hand on something, those tiny, tiny little hairs interact with the atoms of whatever they're touching. And
Oh.
there's tiny little forces, but when they build up, it's enough to keep them stuck.
That's enough to stick you.
Yeah.
There.
So essentially what these guys have done is made a tape using the same principle. So they used microtubes made of plastic polymer, I believe.
And it's got little microscopic things.
On a piece of tape, they've got a micropolymer, which is so thin that it essentially acts in the same way as these geckos' tiny, tiny little hairs.
Yeah.
Supposedly, it's enough that you can cover your hand with it and stick yourself to the ceiling,
Whoa.
which is...
Don't try it at home.
Don't try that at home.
So they basically just made some like really, really strong tape using some like probably unnecessary, complicated like scientific process of studying a gecko's fucking hand.
Well,
Like I don't get the point of like going that far to just to make really strong tape.
I don't think you understand how strong this is.
It's sticky.
It's not like duct tape. You can't, like, you won't be able to just tear this off. You can probably, if you use it in the right way, you could scale a building with it.
But
Like
isn't
Tom
it-
Cruise in Mission Impossible.
Isn't it also really dangerous? Because what if you get it stuck somewhere you don't want it stuck and then you can't get it off?
There's a
What are you
method
gonna
of,
do?
well, obviously geckos can take their hands off.
Yeah.
So there's
but
a method
we're-
of-
you know, we're not geckos. It's tape.
rolling
It's
method.
an inanimate object.
Right, but my point being that if you pull it off in the right way, you're able to remove it.
It will unhook, like unstick.
So with tape uses
Right.
adhesive, which is a chemical thing. So it's sticky because of a chemical. And when you pull that off, you've got residue and you can't really use it again. Whereas this tape is reusable in terms of you can put it on a surface, stick something together, and then if you take it off in the right way, you can then stick it onto something else again.
That's quite cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being Spider-Man.
Sure,
Yeah.
I guess.
Do you not want to be Spider-Man?
Of course.
Well, I'm bi, so I could be Spider-Man.
I'm not even going to question that. Let's
If
just
you
move
want-
on.
If you want your franchise cancelled.
Shall we move on to graphene?
Yes.
Yeah?
So he invented graphene.
So he kind of discovered graphene. Do you guys know what graphene is?
Is it like graphite in caffeine?
No? But it is close. It is
You know
made from
what?
graphite.
Good guess.
You know what? I went there. I gave it a go.
You really went out there. Graphene is an allotrope of carbon. Allotropes are essentially different structural modifications of an element. So you look very confused.
Is it like a different way of structuring the same element?
Yeah, so it's an element in a different form. But in
the same way that last week in the live episode we were talking about protein folding, where it's just like a different form of the same
kind
thing.
of, yeah. Yeah, so an allotrope of with allotropes of carbon, you've got diamond and graphite.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Different
Okay.
coal,
True.
you know.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Although coal isn't really pure carbon, is it? It's not. I'm a silly boy. But essentially, if you just put carbon in different formations in the same phase, so if it's all solid, then those are allotropes. So, as I said, graphene is a single layer of carbon arranged in a hexagonal lattice. And so it's one atom thick. Essentially, it's two-dimensional, one atom thick, and arranged in hexagons. So it's the basic structural element of other allotropes like graphite. So that's how pencils work. When you've got a graphite pencil, you kind of just rub off layers of essentially graphene onto the paper.
Yeah.
Charcoal, carbon nanotubes, those are all basically made up of graphene. And you can think of it as an indefinitely large aromatic molecule. Do you guys know what an aromatic molecule is?
Absolutely not.
I'm big dumb boy. I know nothing
Big
about
dumb boy.
science.
That's fine. I've got exactly here what an aromatic is. So an aromatic is essentially
Isn't that
a ring.
Type of duck.
No.
Hey, romantic.
A romantic duck.
And
Yes.
An aromatic molecule is a ring-shaped molecule of carbon atoms connected together, where the electrons in the middle are kind of just dislocated. So they just kind of they don't sit in one particular place. They just move around,
Okay.
which makes it really strong.
Okay.
Okay.
You following me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can visualize it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
six
I can
carbon
see it.
atoms arranged in a ring, and then some electrons just bounce around the middle.
Yeah.
So that makes them really stable. They don't really break apart, and they don't really react with other substances either. They're pretty strong, and they're called aromatic molecules because the first ones that were discovered smelled like stuff.
Okay. That makes sense then.
Yeah, that's literally the only reason. Like aroma.
I really want some duck now. I'm starving.
So if you take it thickness by thickness, proportionally, it's 100 times stronger than the strongest steel. So it's nothing to sniff at, and it conducts heat and electricity very efficiently, and it's nearly transparent, which means you can cover things in it and make them very electrically conductive because it's so
really,
conductive.
really cool.
It's really cool.
That
And
seems
it's
like
also-
it would have so many uses.
Yeah, it's got so many uses. If you look at the Wikipedia page,
I have a feeling we've got a list coming up.
I'm not going to give it because it is genuinely too long. But if you want to start like researching this, just look at the Wikipedia page and see how long just the section on uses is.
Yeah.
Because it's a few pages long. There are lots and lots of uses for this, but not many of them have been realized yet because it's still kind of expensive to produce and produce in such a large scale.
Because it's such a specific structure. Is that
Well,
why?
yeah, it's because it's two-dimensional, so it's hard to
Yeah.
get just that one atom thickness.
Yeah.
Or it's not so much that it's hard to get it; it's hard to get it on a large scale.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you guys know how they isolated graphene, which basically means how did they get the one atom thick structure. So Geim and this man called Novozolov, they found graphene on some graphite from a pencil, essentially.
Makes sense.
They isolated it using Scotch tape, like I said. So the physicists had never worked with carbon before, and the team worked for long hours just to familiarize themselves with the literature. And they also decided not to try and read too much because they didn't want to know too much, because they didn't want to know what had been done and what not to do. This basically all began when Geim asked a doctoral student from China named Da Jiang, good pronunciation I'm sure, to polish a piece of graphite an inch across and a few millimeters thick down to 10 microns using a very special machine. And because there was a bit of a language barrier, the student actually just ground it into dust, essentially.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which is not the thinness that he wanted. People in the lab were also observing graphite and scanning it using tunneling microscopy, which is STM, scanning tunneling microscopy. The experimenters would basically just clean the samples with tape before using it. So how that works is essentially anything on the outside.
Cleaning with tape.
Yeah, so anything on the outside of the graphene, you just stick some tape on it and pull it off. And now it's on the tape.
So someone's job was to just like sellotape a pencil for a few hours.
I mean,
That seems like, is that what being a scientist is? You just put some tape on a pencil a bunch of times.
Being
Like,
an intern is.
I don't think they hired one person just to do that. I mean, like,
I mean, what? That's even worse. You've got multiple people.
doing it.
And they come home from work and their partner's like, "Oh, what do you do at work today, honey?" And they're like, "Sellotaped a pencil."
what I mean is,
You got a degree to do that. I can do that. I could go out and do that right now.
Love.
Does that make me a scientist?
the person doing the
Wow.
There's a
sellotaping
pencil.
probably. The person doing the
Some
sellotaping.
sellotape there.
Give me a pencil. Give me some sellotape. I'm a scientist.
Gonna
Where's
do
my
an experiment
PhD?
right here.
The person doing the sellotaping probably had other jobs as well. Is my point.
Oh, so
Yeah.
there wasn't multiple people doing the sellotaping. Okay.
No, there were multiple people studying
Right.
the graphite.
Well,
Yeah, sorry to burst your bubble.
Just when you said they didn't just hire one person to sell
No,
pencils.
they didn't hire one
Sounded
person
like
just
they
to
hired
sellotape.
multiple people.
still, they hired someone to sellotape a pencil. That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, they hired
Like,
someone.
that's your
They hired
job.
someone to study graphite. Part of that is cleaning it.
Yeah, like one day you come into work and it's like, "Oh, will I be making a groundbreaking discovery today?" No, tape on a pencil.
I feel like you have a
Gets all
fundamental misunderstanding to how labs work.
Nope.
It's not like shift work where you come in, it's like, I'm on the bar, am I on the... No, like you come in, you know what you're going to be studying.
Yeah, but still, someone's got to be like lumped with that job. Someone,
Someone who loved
Someone-
themselves with that job.
someone
Probably a lab
realised
tech.
that they had to do that in order to make any progress, and someone was like, "Okay, now it's
Where
your
did it all
job to
go
do."
wrong?
It's a 5-minute job, really, isn't it? It's just sticking to
Yeah, but you got a PhD for all that. Love, you wasted your time.
Get a refund.
Sure. I mean, we could just sellotape some pencils at home, can't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, same difference. So what they did was they apparently picked up the tape from the bin and found that the flakes of graphite on that were finer and thinner than the ones they'd made using the machine, which is ridiculous
Right,
because this
okay.
is a ridiculously expensive machine, and they did it better with some tape.
So now that one person who thought their job was the most miserable job in the world was the most important and fundamental part of this discovery. Putting tape on a pencil, who knew? You're a
I
genius.
think you're assuming that they thought their job was the worst bit.
I feel like you're really harping on the fact that this person only taped the graphite.
It's just a funny image to me, and I like
you
to
silly
picture
pencil
someone-
sellotaper.
So they weren't one layer thick on the tape yet. They got them to one layer thick by just taping them some more. So
So now, right? So now,
don't
let
give
me
him
get
more
this, let me
fuel.
get this straight. So now, someone's job is to sellotape a piece of tape to a piece of tape.
yeah,
Get out!
to make one of the most amazing substances we have in the world.
I can't cope with this.
Put it this way: there are people in primary schools that have probably accidentally made graphene before
Probably
these
every
paid scientists.
day.
Some kid's in the corner eating glue, and somebody else is discovering graphene.
Miss, I just discovered graphene. Pulls out a microscope. Oh, it's a perfect hexagon.
So they swapped the Scotch tape for Japanese Nitto tape, and I quote: "Probably because the whole process is so simple and cheap, we wanted to fancy it up a little and use this blue tape."
Just want to make it fancy, that's why.
Yeah. This is Gaim. Honestly, Gaim just seems like such a cool guy. This was all at the University of Manchester, by the way, so it was nearby.
Oh damn!
Yeah, I know, right?
Not in Russia.
No, he didn't even. He's not really worked
Yeah,
in
I
Russia. Yeah. So this method is unsurprisingly called the Scotch tape method, which Gaim fought
Why
against
is that?
and doesn't like. Yeah, no, he doesn't.
Oh, he doesn't
being
like
called
it?
No, he doesn't like it being called the Scotch tape method.
What did he call it then?
I don't know what he called it. He's not said what he called it. He's just said, I didn't want that name.
Pencil tapey method.
Goods. So they submitted the paper.
Sticky pencil.
Sticky.
sticky.
Sticky on the sticky.
Sticky pencil, then sticky.
They submitted the paper with the findings to Nature, but it was rejected. Nature is a big science journal, by the way. Very
Right,
important.
Okay, there we go.
We've made this joke before.
They didn't go out to the forest and throw it into
I've said this before.
Here,
You
Nature.
made that exact joke last time.
throwing a pencil with a piece of tape on it into the woods.
No. So they submitted it to Nature, but the journal rejected it twice, which apparently happens quite a lot for path-breaking,
Did they submit
groundbreaking
it twice,
ideas.
or did they just hate it so much they were like,
They sent 2 rejections.
absolutely not, absolutely
Yeah.
not.
No, this is really bad, and actually we're sending you another letter to say
Just
just
to-
how bad.
Just to drill it into you, how awful this is.
No, so one person that reviewed it said it didn't constitute a sufficient enough scientific advantage And Geim,
Well,
being the
sad.
lovely man he is, later repeated this in his Nobel Prize speech. For the Nobel Prize he won for discovering
I feel like
this.
it's something you would do.
That's absolutely
If
something I
someone
would do.
criticized your
Definitely.
work
Well, it's not that if someone criticized my work. If someone criticized my work and was wrong,
and was wrong about it, yeah.
it's really
You'd
funny.
put that on the cover of whatever you did. You'd have that like engraved on whatever
be the-
you discovered or invented.
That'd be the review on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a t-shirt.
Yeah, I wear it all the time.
You'd have it like with negative stars written next to it.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I'm right still. You know? I discovered graphene, guys. I did it. That was me. So that's how they discovered graphene. It seems... You'd think it would be a really difficult process, but it's literally just tape.
Sticking some tape to
and
a
graphite.
pencil and then sticking tape to tape.
It's not a pencil, bear in mind. They didn't actually use a pencil. It's just the same
Yeah.
stuff that's in a pencil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make... Not necessarily for
to-
you guys, just for anyone listening.
To illustrate
skeleton.
the point of,
I-
how
I'm ignoring
basic this
that.
seems.
A pencil.
A pencil skeleton.
Yeah, but you can actually... So, this kind of... Just to show how conductive graphene is, you can actually use graphite to complete a circuit.
I've seen videos of this where people complete a circuit with literally the bit from a pencil
Mhm.
and it just explodes in the middle.
Well, you could do that, but you could
Obviously you
draw
can
on a piece of paper.
Really?
So you could... Or not on a piece of paper, or on a piece of whatever,
Whoa.
to complete a circuit.
That's
So the electricity will flow
wild.
through the graphite that's on
I
that.
didn't know that. Whoa.
And if you get that down to being one layer thick, you could then use that circuit to test the electrical properties of graphene. Mental, right?
Wowee.
Yeah. So some of the uses for graphene before we wrap up. Essentially, that we've
I told you the list was coming.
just some, just like three. I've only got
It's
like three.
No, I'm not going to go into the uses today. It's too long.
So uncoated graphene can be used as a neurointerface electrode, which is essentially an electrode for your brain.
Good.
It
That
has
seems useful.
Yeah, it's really good. It can stay in the body for longer, can stay more stable, and also it makes less scar tissue if you put it in,
Right, okay.
which is really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so soon you'll have graphene in your head, you
Love
specifically.
Wow.
So that can be used to restore sensory function or motor disorders in paralysis or people with Parkinson's disease.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And since it's basically transparent and a good conductor, you can use it to make transparent touchscreens, light panels, or maybe even solar cells,
That's cool.
which is really cool. And then also, again, the last one, if you mix it into plastics, like I said, you can turn them into conductors of electricity while making them more heat resistant and mechanically robust, which essentially means they're just stronger
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite a few uses.
Yeah, and that means that you can make super strong materials, which are thin, elastic, lightweight, and really conductive. So you could use that in satellites, airplanes, cars, all that stuff.
Shit.
Yeah, so
Nice.
graphene's going to change the world one day. Hopefully.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, the only issue is...
That's
right,
like a really diverse range of different uses.
yeah, you can use it for
That's really
almost
cool.
anything, supposedly. The only issue is that while we can make it using Scotch tape and a pencil, it's not really enough to cover a car in it. You know? The issue being that we don't have enough. We don't have an actual way of making it on an industrial scale.
I mean,
Giant
is
rolls of
this
tape.
not like the next like entrepreneurial thing that needs to happen? Is like if you're really, really dedicated to making a lot of money, you could just sit there with a piece of tape and a pencil making graphene, and when you've got enough to cover a car, you're like, suddenly I'm rich.
Self-made billionaire.
There
Yeah,
you go. That's it.
How did you get rich? Well, I just sat in my office, got a piece of sellotape, started sticking it to pencils and stuff. Eventually covered a car in it. Chilling.
This is like the new YouTube sensation. Stop filming yourself in your bedroom. Start sticking
Covering
tape
my
to-
car in one layer of
this-
graphene challenge.
That's it. I'm gonna start ASMR videos of just me, tape and pencils, and then tape and
That
tape.
might kick
That's
off,
two birds with one stone.
That might kick off.
Yeah, I've called it. Again, I'm just changing the world with my.
And then
wacky
years
ideas.
down the line, when you finally got enough, you can be like, I saved all of it. All this tape was for a reason.
And by that point, they'll have discovered a better way of producing graphene, and you'll be penniless.
No.
That
Absolutely
is
not. Is that the show?
that is the show.
Yay!
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 We learned it.
We learned. What did you guys learn? What did you learn, Jake?
I learnt that they made a frog float and then cut him open, and then I learnt that some guy got paid to stick tape to a pencil.
Yeah, good. Good.
And that tape is now on cars and stuff.
Okay, not true, but yeah, that's fine. Good.
Going to be on cars, though.
Yeah.
Champ.
I learned. Well, firstly, I learned that anything can float magnetically,
Mm-hmm.
and that on an atomic level, you can make things. You can turn things into magnets, which was quite cool. Then towards the end, I learned that you can make a circuit with just by drawing with a pencil.
Yeah.
Which is quite cool.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
That's quite cool.
Anything you want to plug, Jake?
My
No.
ass.
No.
Who made the same joke?
Daniel J. Layton.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. You can find the full references for this episode in the description. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday. And why not leave a nice wee review? Find and contact us at SciGuysPod on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Or send us an email at sciguyspod@gmail.com.
That's sciguyspod@gmail.com.
You can follow me at Not Corry everywhere.
Follow me at Champion everywhere.
You can follow me at JakeFTMagic everywhere.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.